Florida State recently hosted a massive recruiting weekend and made a big push for several top recruits. Last weekend was Florida State's Legacy Weekend, and that's something that they do every year where they honor former players and have several familiar faces come back to Tallahassee. Last year is when Jermaine Johnson had his brick ceremony, and this year was Jared Verse and Jamie Robinson. It's always a pretty big event and usually generates a ton of recruiting buzz for the Noles, and last weekend was no exception. Now, there were several recruits on campus, even some for the 2026 cycle, but for now we're just focused on the 2025 kids. We'll start with Alvin Henderson, a four-star running back out of Alabama. And you guys know these Alabama kids are always pretty tough to pull out of state. Auburn's pushing really hard for him, but he's also shown a lot of interest in Florida State and even Miami. He does commit pretty soon, I believe in the next couple of weeks, so getting him in for a visit this close is a pretty big deal. Now, he did decline to interview, which isn't too shocking considering how close he is to his commitment date. Now, he does currently hold a couple of predictions to Auburn, and I tend to agree with that right now. I do think he's an Auburn lean, but as we all know, it's a long recruiting season and nothing is ever completely over. Now, if that one doesn't work out, they also have four-star running back Byron Lewis on campus, who I know that they also really like. There's a tough competition for him as well with Alabama, Ohio State, and Miami all pushing for him along with FSU. Monterville is definitely needing to replace some production at running back after losing Trey Benson to the NFL draft, so I think Henderson and Lewis are guys that they really want to land. Another guy that gets mentioned a lot is Usman Chroma, who's visiting actually this week. I think they really want to try to get two of these three guys, and I actually think they sit in a decent spot to do that. Maybe the most likely two are Lewis and Chroma, but we'll see how the visits shake out. But I feel confident that Florida State can at least land one, but hopefully two. Now moving on to wide receiver, Florida State hosted 5-star Caleb Cunningham and 4-star receiver Renell Brown. For Caleb, he's an elite talent, for sure, thus his 5-star status. But he's a Mississippi kid, and it seems like a stretch that he leaves that state. Now I will say he's been on campus a couple times recently and plans to come back at least for a couple more. Again, it's tough to get him out of state, but I think if he does decide to open up about leaving Mississippi, Florida State is probably the biggest threat to land him. You just got to keep getting him back on campus. Now, for Renell Brown, I think he's one of Florida State's highest targets at receiver, and I think even his 4-star status is actually a little underrated because he's really, really good. He confirmed what pretty much everybody knows, and that's that Florida State and Ohio State are the two leaders for him. Now, cue the PTSD with trying to land a receiver that Ohio State is also trying to land, but he says those two schools have really separated themselves, and I'd bet good money that he ends up signing at one of these two schools in December. Now, hopefully it's Florida State, and I think they did make a good move for him last weekend. He stayed for multiple days and got to hang out with current and former players, along with seeing their practice and seeing how this coaching staff operates. Now, Florida State also has Tramell Jones committed for 2025, and that is actually Renell's 7-on-7 quarterback. So that definitely helps, too, already having a relationship there. Tramell actually even said that he feels very good about getting Renell Brown to join him at Florida State. So overall, solid push on Florida State here. Now, moving into the trenches a bit, we'll start with 4-star defensive lineman Myron Charles, who the Noles, in my opinion, are pretty much a lock to land at this point. He said multiple times that the Florida State is his leader, and he keeps popping back into Tallahassee. I definitely see him hopping in the boat sooner rather than later. Now, another blue-chip defensive lineman, Jalen Wiggins, who is actually a current Florida commit, but he's from Tallahassee and is really high on the Noles. He even brought his parents in with him on his last visit, which is always a pretty good sign. He really loves his staff and will be coming back for an official visit sometime in the summer, so the Noles need to keep chipping away at him and see if they can't work on a flip for another talented defensive lineman. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Noles also hosted 3 blue-chip offensive linemen in Max Buchanan, Jawan Gasson, and Zaire Addison. Now, coming out of the weekend, Addison has named Florida State his leader. This one probably won't be happening soon. He's definitely going to take some OBs, but Florida State obviously sits in a good spot for him. With Jawan Gasson, he's from Georgia and does currently hold a crystal ball to the Bulldogs, so it's going to be another tough pull to get out of state, but if they keep getting him on campus, they definitely have a shot. Now, for Max Buchanan, UCF and Florida are also recruiting him pretty hard, but if Florida State really pushes, it seems like they could emerge for him. He's very big on development, and again, the recruits getting to watch a practice while on this visit was huge. All these guys really love watching Alex Atkins coach, and they can see the development, and I think that's going a long way here. Now, offensive linemen typically don't rush into their decisions, so no clear timeline on getting a commit from any of these guys just yet, but good to see Alex Atkins putting in some real work on the trail again this cycle. Florida State already has a really solid group of guys committed for 2025, but they're definitely looking to keep adding to that and building at least a top 10 class this cycle. I definitely think the trenches, the lines of scrimmage, should be off to a much better start than the last couple of years that we've seen. Again, this staff just has to find a way to close. But I do think that 2025 will be Mike Norvell's best high school class yet, and will be an elite group by the time it's all said and done. We appreciate you guys tuning in and talking some Florida State recruiting. If you enjoyed the content, definitely like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all things Florida State football. But now I want to hear from you guys. Do you think Florida State finishes with a top 10 recruiting class in 2025? Let me know down in the comments, and let's talk Noles.